dan kom jy agter wat dit werklik is en wat werklik aan die gang is en so. So dis baie erger as wat die mense dink of wat baie mense besef. So en die beste wat jy kan doen is om te gaan vir jou jab. En dis maar so. En die mense wat bang is vir die chips, jy weet dat hulle sê jy gaan gechip word. Wel my vriend wat Ironman doen het nou die dag vir my laat weet, hy's nou konsy's gechip, maar dit werk nie want hy's nog net so stadig as wat hy altyd was. So
hierdie stories maak hy so moeg. Nee, regtig, hierdie stories maak my moeg. Weet jy, my dogter is wat 33 en sy stryd toe met haar sy sê toe die storie van die vaccines en die gaan dit en dit en dit. Maar as die man toe kind was, het jy al die inspuitings gekry by die skool? Polio en almal. Is jy al dood daarvan? Nee. So shut up, want gaan kry die ding.
Ja, nee, dit is die ouens, maar ja, dit is maar elke ou se reg, maar as hulle vir my enigstens vra en ek verkondig dit so wyd as moontlik, sê luister, as jy kan, gaan vir daai jabs. Dis die beste wat jy kan doen, want ons verstaan nog nie die dinge. En die toetse en goed is gedoen. Dit klink net of dit so vinnig gebeur het, maar dit was bestaande tegnologie en goed wat al toetse gedoen is, baie jare terug. So, as gevolg van die feit dat daar soveel geld en aandag reg oor die wêreld geskenk is, kon hulle die goed verhaas en het hulle dit verander en so. So, ja, ek kan nie sê, yes, okay, jy moet of jy moet nie, maar as hulle vir my vra, en sê ek wel, dit wat ek my familie deurgesit het en myself deurgesit het en deurgegaan het en goeders, wel, ek dink nie die jab kan veel erger wees nie, en as dit is wel, dan is dit so, maar dis 'n berekende risiko wat jy vat, en ek sal dit enige tyd eerder vat as om weer deur hierdie proses te gaan van die afgelope 3 maande.
Ja, so, want jy was amper nie meer saam met ons nie, ja?
Nee, ek was letterlik dood gewees, my longe het al twee plat geval, hulle die een long het plat geval, en toe hulle die drein insit, toe val die ander long plat, en toe hulle daai drein insit, toe gaan staan my hart, so ek het letterlik geflatline, so hulle dan toe nou my kon resuscitate, maar die volgende dag het hulle my vrou laat kom en gesê sy moet maar groet. Hulle dink nie dit gaan veel langer wees nie, maar ja, gelukkig my vrou, my seun wat ook daar was, het gesê wel hulle gaan dit nie vat nie. Hulle sal bid, die dokter moet doen wat hy moet doen, hulle sal bid, God sal doen wat hy moet doen. So ja. En hier is ek vandag. So
ons is bly jy's hier. Baie dankie dat jy bereid was om te vra. Okay.
Dankie.
Anneke, ek sien die manne kom stadig in.
Ja, miskien nog so 'n bietjie wag, Nico, wat dink jy?
Ja, ek dink ook so.
Hallo Barry.
Hello, would that be Sarki?
No, it's Anneke.
Anneke, my apologies. Oh,
No, don't worry.
getting myself in trouble.
Ja, nee, jy moet versigtig wees, jong.
Ekskuus. As nie 'n gesig wat uitkom en sê hand is op, ek praat met jou.
Barry, is jy gesond?
Ja, dankie. Ek moes net my longe 'n bietjie laat check. Maar hulle het net vir my gesê ek het al my hele lewe nou net verkeerd asem gehaal. So ek is nou besig om te leer om nou korrek asem te haal, en binne 'n week is my longe nou 100% beter. Besig om te hike en te kere te gaan, so ek is baie bly, dankie.
Dis baie bly. Ja, Corrie wat hier op is wat ook 'n bietjie gaan praat. Hy was so te sê weg gewees en hy het toe teruggekom. Hy het dit ook gehad. Hy het nou vir ons vertel, nou jy het dit gehad. Dis bad, en as daar mense wat dit nie kry nie. Ek het dit byvoorbeeld nog nie gehad nie, maar ek het altyd die jabs, en ek drink ivermectin elke week. Ja, ek drink dit. Ek gaan nou nie om wat hulle sê nie, die varke en die skape lewe daarvan, so ek en my vrou.
Ek drink. Ek sê mos horse medicine is reg. Skof vir jou sommer reg.
Ek drink dit.
Ja, nee.
Nico, kyk daar ivermectin werk vir parasiete, jy weet, nou nie vir viral infections nie, maar hulle sê as al die parasiete nou in jou maag dood is, kan jy ook na 3 dae bietjie beter voel. En maar dis nou net op 'n ligte noot, maar wat hulle sê waarvoor ivermectin wel help is dit versterk tog jou immuniteit. En dit is hoekom daar sekere, jy weet, hoekom dit goed is, maar asseblief drink tog die menslike goed, nie die diergoed nie, want dit kan vir jou nierprobleme en al die ander goeters nou weer ook gee, jy weet. So, maar ja.
Maar dit is eintlik nie dier nie. Dis deur en deur. Ja, nee, die uitsprake is kan dalk 'n bietjie moeilik wees. In Engels is dit baie makliker. Jy sê animal and costing. Ja, dan verstaan jy sommer onmiddellik. Ja.
Okay.
Horse medicine's always been good.
Ja.
Hy sterker as ons.
For horses, yeah. I'm trying to give it to my wife, but it's not affecting her.
Yeah, but don't they say horses for courses?
Yeah,
the other thing with ivermectin is what it says it does. It also gets between some molecule in your body and where the virus tries to attach onto the little node point, and it tends to weaken that connection point, which prevents the virus from getting into your system. So yeah, you know, it's not a cure as such. I see it more as something that is preventative in that regard. So it actually helps to strengthen your immune system. You just got to be careful while all those parasites are being nailed in your system, that you don't end up with other issues.
Yeah, but I think, you know, vitamin C, D, E, F, G, H, Z.
A to Z.
Yeah, I drink A to Z.
The Z is zinc.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I see. Anneke, how many people have we got now? Sorry, I'm chatting away. I'm not checking the time. Nice to chat to people, sure.
Be nicer to sit around a table and chat to people and look at their face.
Yeah. I'm glad we don't have to do that anymore. Otherwise, I had to fly somewhere or drive somewhere now. So one sits at home and you still get the same done. Yeah.
Yeah, but you do that 10 times in the year, 10 times in a day, as against just 2 meetings or 3 meetings is normal.
This is my third one now. This is now my third one today.
For today or the week?
Today. Today.
I promise you, Nico, I've shortened my presentation, so I'm not going to sit here and waffle for an hour like I did last time.
For a change, huh? Have you tidied up your book rack behind you? Because I'm going to tell you it's still untidy.
Of course it is. You know it is.
You must pack it right before you come on.
No. It shows that I'm busy.
No. It shows you bloody disorganized.
It shows I've got a lot going on.
Now, there was a guy, professor on 403 on the TV, and I nearly died. He was a professor, a law professor. And I said to my wife, look at the background there. It's such a mess that I can't believe one lives like that.
Yeah. Bezig.
Anneke, how many people?
We're currently on 16.
Okay. You think we should start?
Yes, I'll get the agenda back on. Can you guys see the agenda?
Is Tumelo on?
Yes.
Tumelo,
Let me just mute myself. I'm just going to mute myself. Hold on a sec.
Anneke, Tumelo in, our first speaker.
No, Nico, I can't see him.
No, not that one. What for?
You've got a number for him or not?
Yes, just hold on a second. I'm going to see if I can call him.
Because maybe sometimes people battle to get get connected. So, and I don't want to start too late because that's rude to the people that are on time. Anneke, you've started the recording. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the meeting because there's the whole introduction story. If Tumelo is not in yet, then I will, because I'm doing a short talk on environmental, then I'll do that, and then he can come in and be rustig. So
No, that's fine. That's right. I was going to suggest that maybe we move on to the next item, and then when he logs in, then we can just, take it from there. Okay, thank you.
And you've started recording.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to put my face on for those who don't know me. Right, welcome to everybody. Those who do not know me, I'm Nico Pino from ASPASA. I think there's a few people that have joined. Firstly, I'm going to keep this short. Secondly, it's the first time we're holding a meeting for the Northern Cape. And I was talking to somebody now with Willem Velding at the DMRE. He circulated. So we're trying to get into the Northern Cape and also share with the mines there. There's many mines I understand from Willem and from other people in the Northern Cape. So that's the whole reason. It's the first time we've ever held a Northern Cape ASPASA regional meeting. The second thing is I just want to welcome you all and thank you for coming. And then the third thing is it's still August, so it's still Women's Month. And we in ASPASA started well, we don't want to call it women in mining because there's sometimes a negative connotation to that because people think it's about pink overalls, but we call it gender justice. And you won't believe what came out in our first meeting. We're having one soon. Anneke is working on the agenda, and it's going to be very good. So if anybody wants to get into that meeting, please let Anneke know, and she'll send you the agenda. Then the next point is that when we hold meetings at ASPASA, we always make sure that there's no anti-competitive story. So we're not going to say, okay, we're going to do this, that, and not do this and that. So this is recorded. If you feel uncomfortable, you put your hand up, you make that comment, and then you're free to leave the meeting if you feel that we are colluding. But we in ASPASA don't collude because we deal with all legal issues or issues of general importance. And then the third thing, or the fourth or the fifth, I don't know where I am now. Sorry, I've lost it. But it's about when you participate, please, short and sweet. You can put your video on. The rest of us will put our mics and videos off, and we'll carry on that way. So that's in short what we normally say. And we welcome the ladies, we welcome the men, we welcome everybody. We welcome two guys that I know of. I'm not sure about everybody. Two guys that had COVID. One was very sick. He's going to talk. I phoned him yesterday afternoon, and he's eager to talk. His name is Corey. You'll see on the new agenda, he's talking. So we're just waiting for Tumelo. But in the meantime, what we'll do is, Anneke, if you could put my slides up. I won't be long, and I won't waste your time on this because most of you have heard of it, have been involved, and if you've not, then, well, at least then you know, and you can always contact us. And that's about the environmental issues. So, Anneke, why don't you just put those few slides up, and then I will run through them. Please note this meeting is recorded. After the meeting, the recording gets put on YouTube. So if you want to, you go to YouTube, you click, you type in ASPASA, and then you can click in Northern Cape regional meeting, and it brings you to the Northern Cape regional meeting presentation. It's all on YouTube.
Sorry, Nico, can you see it?
I can see it. It's just, can you enlarge it? Because it's
yes, I will.
Okay. Thanks for that. Yeah, I think I was saying to my wife yesterday, man, I like COVID, the sense that we don't have to travel all over the place. Because if I had to, I would have had to go to Kimberley now to go and do this this talk, and I'm sitting in the nicest town in South Africa, which is Dullstroom. So yeah, it's just rustig. Right, let me kick off. I think what I just want to share as an introduction, environmental and health and safety is two of our strongest legs in ASPASA. We've now added two very important legs too. One is explosives and the blasting story and all of the stuff that goes around that. That's why Corey will talk. And then the other one is the technical issues, which Barry Pierce will talk. So we've actually now got four major focus areas where we say, guys, these are things that that affect our businesses. And I think that's why in these presentations we just touch on it. Last year, COVID, we didn't do environmental audits. During that period, I got asked by many of our members to re-look at the way we do it. We then took time and we developed a new way of doing it. So I'm just going to shortly discuss with you what we're going to do now. So Anneke, just give me the next slide so I can just go through it with those involved. What we did is, and it's not me, I'm not clever enough to do this. This is a guy called Anthony Bones who helped us. He's a quarry manager for Lafarge in Nelspruit, and he understands the process. And what we did is I'll just quickly take you through this because this is crucial. And we never, in all the years I've been around, nobody's ever come up to break a quarry down into this. And it doesn't matter if you do what type of mining, you're most probably going to go through the same options. So the first one, left top, that's where we say that's where your documents start when you deal with environmental issues. Your EMPR, your mining right, and all your other legal issues. And what we found, and what we had a very good session with some of our members. What we found is that often people quarry managers don't understand the first step there. And I think what Anneke, next time what we do is we must number them, but that left top one is where it starts. And people, we found it that quarry managers do not understand the MPR and so forth and so forth. So Anthony said, but if you don't understand the rules of the game and the laws you have to comply to, how can you be involved, you know? So what we've done is in the past, we used to rely heavily on environmental consultants, and I think that's where one falls flat. And just also in that introduction session there, it's crucial that the quarry manager, the person in charge of the operation, the appointed person, he understands what the documents mean, and he's familiar with them. And why? Because the things have changed over the few years that we've now been doing we're doing environmental issues for a long time now. But these days, if the quarry manager doesn't know what's going on in his operation, or the mine manager doesn't know what goes on in his operation, he's open for a surprise. The communities are getting heavily involved in operations. They're coming and they're asking you. So if he knows his story, he's all right. He or she, I always say he, but he or she is all right, and they can stand up and they can defend themselves. So that's the first point, that we think that most of the effort should go into that first point, and connected to that is the block in the middle, the green block, the SLPs, your communities, your neighbors. That's becoming crucial these days. Then we move around, and you'll see the overburden, stripping, quarrying. There we'll look at what environmental issues are there, the drill and blast, quarry, your stuff, look at what goes on there. The load and haul, we need to understand what goes on there. That's normally where the dust and the noise and the stuff is made. So that's crucial. Then the crushing and screening is also dust, noise, and all those other nice things that go with that, and water sprays and stuff. And I think that's where, if you look at that, that's most probably crushing and screening is also where Barry's focus area comes in. Are you crushing and screening properly, number one? And when you stockpile, are you stockpiling correctly? Because what happens, people, we've heard, and Barry might just confirm that, people don't know how to take samples. They take a foshol and they think that's a sample. And the technical guys will tell you that's not a sample. So the whole thing about stockpiling on the environmental side is crucial. Then the load and dispatch, when it goes out into the roads with the trucks, delivery and collection, those guys will come and fetch. The quarry rehabilitation, that's a big thing that we find that causes problems. And then at the end of the day, you need to know what you're going to do with mine closure. And so that's the generic process flow of operation, and we're going to now focus environmental focus areas on each of those breakdowns. So I think that's in short what that diagram is about, and it will be we can always send this presentation out. But what we're doing differently now, and I'm going to keep it very short, is that we're going to have a manager's presentation. We had one, a draft one. Anneke, you can move on. We had one done for us by a manager in Nelspruit, and it was Afrimat's quarry there, and I was there that day. It was absolutely interesting. The manager had studied himself into the process, and he came and he gave a presentation, and many of the stuff that he told in the presentation or shared with the so-called auditing team. We had a team there of people that were interested to see if it works. We actually even had the clay brick people there. We had 2 people from the clay brick industry, because also for them it's crucial, and they have the same problem. And we then went through this, and this manager, he was so bloody good. A new guy, he studied himself into it, and he told us many things. What he also did is he told us where there's going to be a problem when we walk through the plant. So he went through his documentation. He had a good understanding of the documentation, what it said, what it needed. Because for those of you who've been around longer than what I have, often those documents were drawn up by a consultant. They were cut and paste. We've had it many times where one company's name is in the other company's document because they forgot to take it out, and so forth and so forth. So this presentation from the manager is exceptional. And when we say the manager's presentation, it comes from the manager, not from some consultant or some head office person or something. It comes from the manager who's appointed to run that operation. I think what we also want to point out quickly, and I'm not going to go through the whole lot, but the satellite industries, and we've now found that to be a problem. Your ready-mix plants on your quarry area, your clay brick, your brick plants, your whatever bitumen plants and stuff like that. If it's on the mining area, I mean it's relevant to the mine manager for the area that he's got, the quarry manager. So people have to identify these things and sort them out. Otherwise, you can't say, "Oh, it's not my business; it's somebody else's business." But if it's there on your premises, you have to deal with that. I'm not gonna go through the whole. You can read there. We've done some nice presentations. Also, the presentation should include examples and actions and communication platforms. It's crucial these days to talk to the communities so they also know what's going on. The misconception of communities is that if there's a mine, there's a lot of money, and that's not absolutely true. So one needs to show them what happens, your recycling projects, your waste reduction programs, and so forth and so forth. So it's crucial that the manager comes across as if he knows what goes on, and it will be helpful when he does get questioned one day by the community or by the regulators. There's different regulators: water affairs, environmental affairs, DMRE. So, okay. Then we're going to go into the physicals. Anneke, you can move on. I'm at the physical site audit. That will be a separate thing where one walks through. And once we get an auditor, we haven't appointed an auditor yet. Anneke, you can move on the slides to physical site audit. Okay. Once the auditor, whoever that's going to be, we have to find one before January, February next year. Before once the paperwork is checked and the manager's made his presentation, we're going to do a physical audit, and that's where the so-called auditor, he or she, we don't know who that's going to be, takes a walk through and then goes and looks at what's going on. Annika, we're trying to get somebody, Cobus Harding, in, and I think he's covering our slide. So if you would admit him, please. Sorry for that, guys.
Sorry, Nico, I have to break the presentation as I have to get into the screen to let him in.
Okay, let me try, and I'm trying to admit him, but he's not getting in.
There you go. Done.
Okay. Right, so this physical environmental site walkthrough is going to look at something like mine boundaries. We find that people don't know where their boundaries are. Conveniently, some misuse it. They go further. The whole thing about water management. Water management in the last 2, 3, 4 years has become a major problem. Stormwater runoffs. We've had some communities object to what happens in mines. Waste management, waste reduction, oil traps and recovery. Those are all environmental things that we need to see that they are done properly. And unfortunately, that's how it works. The rehabilitation of topsoil reserves, the dust buckets. The dust buckets is a little bit pet of mine. I was taught about bad dust buckets by Alan Cluett many years ago, where he found that guys took a 2-liter Coke bottle, cut the top off, put a few nails through it and put it on a plank, and they captured dust that way, and then they said, oh, they haven't got such a lot of dust. That's not how it works, I'm told. It's a very scientific system. So if somebody's doing your dust auditing at your place, they must do it properly. That's if they know where their buckets are. That we've also found. They charge you monthly, they come and they do your dust audits, but they don't know where the buckets are. So that's another problem. The other problem with dust is that we've also found that farmers make dust on the land, roads make dust, and the communities then say it's the mine or the quarry. So we need to make sure that we deal with those things. I'm moving on. I don't know where we are now. Alien vegetation, Annika. I think that's a major problem, alien vegetation. We have that one specifically very strong in another one, Annika, there we are. Makes it very strong in provinces like KZN, where the weeds grow or the stuff grow within a few weeks. And then species and mine boundaries and electricity saving measures, those are all issues that the physical audit will do. Then shortly, just to finish off, and I say this little talk is available from Annika. I think what we're trying to do is, and why we've changed the environmental audit system, and I make a joke about this. I'm not doing it. But the days where somebody comes in, and they used to talk about like that about head office. The head office guy flies in, he eats the food, he shits on everybody's head, and he flies out. Those days are over. I don't think that's what we want to do. We don't want to break down people's morale. So the whole way of doing environmental audits is holding people's hands, and then at the end of the day, the guy feels strong. He had backup, and so that is very, very important. That Annika, you can put on conclusion, please. Make sure that the operation achieves compliance. I think that's the crucial thing, and not to go and jump on him, because him or her, which causes problems. People then get all worked up, and then they get anti-audits, and then they try everything not to have an audit. And they always use COVID these days. They're very creative now. We can't have anybody have to do an audit until DMRE closes them down to a Section 54 for a week. That's going to cost them much more. But I think what we want to do with this thing is make it positive. And I've always had the problem with this flying in, crapping on everybody, eating their food and flying out. It's always bugged me. So I think that's very important. The existing information on file from the about face audits must be used as the same reference system will be used. We're not going to go into another thing and make more paperwork and all that. Audits is to assist mine managers and site managers and their teams, and not to be negative. I can just maybe share with you, those of you who are not in the companies that do this, but environmental issues are on some of the companies' boards' agenda. So we used to have health and safety, but now environmental has become an issue which boards, top executives want to know about. because you don't want to be on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange and get a Sunday Times front page saying you're pumping something into one or other river and all the fish have died, because then you've got a major problem. So that's why we're doing this. The consequences of not doing environmental issues properly is severe, and that's supported by top guys. The leaders of the industry are saying, come and help us and sort it out, that our places are right, because they want to sit in a board meeting and know that somebody's been there to have a look at it, show the problem areas, and maybe also hold the hand of the site. So that's what we're saying, is just to help everybody become compliant and hold hands and help the poor guy who sits there. Environmental issues, and just before I end off, and I never understood it, because I don't think I'll be very honest with you. I always thought environmental issues is wiping off the dust of the leaves of the trees and cleaning the bunnies' asses. That's what I thought environmental was about. Wiping the poor bunny in the morning, and then he hops around and he's clean and he's environmentally friendly. That's not about it. It's a very, very, very complicated subject matter. And I relate it back. I'm not a lawyer, but I've got a master's degree in law. And if somebody says to me, I'm going to go to my lawyer to come and stuff you up, then I always used to say, I hope your lawyer knows what he's talking about. Because a divorce lawyer, for example, can't fight a traffic fine. A divorce lawyer can't come and fight a unfair dismissal or stuff like that. So each person is in his own field in the law, and environmental is exactly the same. It's a very complicated subject matter. There's people that are very good in water law, there's got dust law, and all of that in environmental issues. So we're trying to say, it's complicated. We've got some very good consultants. We've got some backup people that are specialists in their field. We've got a good relationship with the Department of Water Affairs that we got together last year. So if anybody has problems with these things, shout, and we can try and see if we can help. So that, I think, is roughly what I want to say about environmental matters. And we're going to start in January, and we're going to start this thing new and positive and get our side of the. And yes, just to interrupt myself, it's no use saying, the guy down the road, his place is looking bad, so why must I comply? I don't think that's an excuse. It's crucial that we do it properly. Unless there's any questions, or Anneke can see any questions, then I think I've said my say. But if you have a question or a comment, please do so, and then we can move on to the next speaker. Anneke, is our next speaker in?
No, Nico, and I'm battling to get hold of him. I'll try again.
Okay. In that case, I'm going to be bold and move on, because I don't want to waste your people's time, really. I'm going to ask Barry Pierce. He's promised me he's going to keep it short this time. He has also admitted that his bookshelf behind him is not neat. So, Barry, there's Jock. Jock, you want to ask a question?
Sorry, Nico, I just want to say that I do see Tumelo Mateta on the guest list.
Oh, do you?
It seems like he did join.
Tumelo, are you in, bro?
Morning, Nico, and good morning to the rest of the team. I managed to finally log in.
Oh, shame. That happens to Melo. Welcome.
Thank you.
We don't get in, or we speak and we don't put our mic on. I do that frequently. Tumelo, is your presentation ready? Are you going to present something, or must Anneke help you? Then we're going to carry on with you. I don't want to waste your time. You've got so many guys out in the Northern Cape. You must go and give a few Section 54s too. So we don't want to waste your time sitting here.
No, thank you very much. I think I've got a presentation that I've actually prepared, and I think if I may, I'm going to try and share it with everyone.
Thanks. For those people who do not know, Tumelo is our colleague and our friend in DMRE in the Northern Cape. His name was given to me by our other friend Willem Velding. They were colleagues for many years. So we always ask the DMRE to give us a talk. Remember, we're not anti DMRE, they're not enemies. We work together. ASPASA definitely does. I always say I've got the personal cell phone number for David Msizwe. So if I have a problem, I phone my good friend David, the Chief Inspector of Mines. So we're not into the fighting and in the old days we used to, and everybody wanted to make their story. But that's why we asked Tumela. Tumela, I'm going to go off now. Shut up and take my face off, and it's your party now. Thanks, Tumela.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Nico, for the opportunity. I hope that everyone can see the presentation.
We can see it. I don't know if you make now. I think it's fine. I don't know if you can make it bigger. I don't know how it works.
Okay, I'll put it into I'll put it in presentation mode,
Okay.
and hopefully everyone can actually see it. What I've tried to do was to really just get to give an overview to, I think to ASPASA and all the, all members that we've got, to say what exactly is the Northern Cape, what exactly are our challenges, and how I think we need to actually just move forward from that. So in terms of my presentation for the day, it's actually just going to cover probably around about 4 key issues, and that's going to be COVID trends, occupational health and safety, our key challenges, and then we're going to conclude. In terms of COVID, for the Northern Cape so far, in terms of the total for all the mines, we've got 64 people that have thus far succumbed, and in the positive cases for open cast mines, we've got 5,428, and then underground mines, we've got 2,378. And I think if everyone, I think everyone by now is pretty aware of the structural layout for the Northern Cape, and that as the Northern Cape, most of the mines that we've got is open cast mines, and we only have around about 6 underground operations in the province, and that has assisted us in terms of managing COVID. And I think the other thing that has also assisted us, most of the mines that we've got, it's trackless, it's trackless mobile machinery that is actually used, and somehow that actually assists because they're actually not so labor intensive. If you note, I mean, from the slide, currently we've got 397 employees that currently act, positive, versus the 130 that we've got in underground operations. And thus far, our recovery rate as the Northern Cape open cast mines is 89%, but for all mines it's actually 94%, which is actually quite good. And this is versus a recovery rate of 86% for the entire province. And this slide speaks to the testing of testing employees in the industry. So far, the tests that have actually been conducted is 6,946, and this is for underground employees. And then for surface mines, we've conducted around 32,223 versus a total population of 40,614. And whilst back on this slide of testing, I think one of the issues that we actually battling with as industry is the reluctance of employees to actually get vaccinated. And I think it's something that we need to collectively find a solution to. I think as a department, we are well aware that there's all of this negative talk of the vaccine and then it's the effects that it actually has. And that is somehow hampering the drive for the department and I think for industry to make sure that we get as many people as we can to actually vaccinate. In terms of the drive for making sure that we're actually testing employees, that has actually from the start of COVID up until thus far, that has at most of the times is always actually improving, and we need to actually just do more of that. But the current challenges, as I've indicated, is in terms of the employees that are reluctant to get their jabs. When it comes to health and safety, as the Northern Cape, we've got currently thus far we've got 3 employees that have unfortunately passed away from the operations that we've got, and this is versus only 1 employee that we see one fatality that we experienced last year. And I would further explain the causes of those fatalities in the slides, in my following slides. In terms of occupational, health and safety trends, what the slides tries to do is to depict where, as a province, we actually have been coming from. Right, from 2008, we had 6 fatality, 6 employees that were fatally injured in our mines. We experienced a peak in 2015, 2016, 2015. We had 10 employees that actually passed away from in the industry. 2016, there's 7, and this year, as I've indicated, there's 3 employees that have passed away. And I think at this point in time, indicate that, again, we sit at an advantageous position, and this is a relative underground operations, because most of our operations are open cast operations, and they are relatively safer compared to underground mines. National challenges that from the investigations, challenges that we that we're noting from the reports is that, yes, of course, we actually experienced a challenge in terms of falls of ground. I mean, they've contributed 34%, and your general type of incident is 13, and transportation and mining is 13. As a region, our main problem is trucks. It's transport. It's TMMs, as I've indicated, that most of the operations that we've got are using machines for loading and hauling material from the face itself to the plant. In terms of occupational diseases, what we've got as a province is that from 2018, there was a total of 34 occupational diseases that we actually reported. In 2019, we had 67. In 2020, we had 28 diseases that we actually reported. And of course, this is given the challenges that we experience of operations that we're actually not reporting, primarily because there was traveling restrictions that were actually imposed, so people couldn't really get their their stuff through to the office. From the diseases that I actually reported in the office, most of the challenge that we're experiencing, it's PTB and noise-induced hearing loss. And as part of the drive, what we're doing as a province is to investigate the reports that are actually conducted after the getting these diseases. And one of the challenges that we've actually also noted is that quality of reporting that is actually there. And one of the areas that I think as a province we actually can definitely improve upon is the ratio of occupational hygienists compared to the employees that are actually being serviced. And again, the issue of ratio of OMPs compared to the employees that actually are being serviced. As a province, we definitely have a challenge in terms of those qualified skills, and that actually has to be addressed. I think industry also has, we collectively with industry have to come together to make sure that we attract skill, and then we retain that skill, and we get people to come through and add value to the province, and particularly to our small operators that we've got, so that you don't get someone that is actually servicing mines here in the Northern Cape and they are in KZN and Northwest. We've got people that are actually always running all over the show. That in itself is actually not assisting, because there is no value inspections that are actually conducted, or over inspections that are actually conducted, which is leading to a challenge that we're actually experiencing in this regard. In terms of airborne, airborne for all regions, and this is for the entire country. For me, quite challenging, or a concern to see, is that we've got employees that are still within the HAG A group, and this particularly for airborne, pollutants. This is an area that we need to definitely improve upon. I mean, in 2010 it was 6.6% of employees that were in that HEG group, and then in 2020 there's 6.87 employees, which in a way is not representing any improvement. So we definitely need to improve and make sure that we get these employees into the HEG B, and then ultimately into HEG C. For the Northern Cape, as I indicated, what we've got as well is employees that are actually in that HEG A group. For me, as I indicated, it's quite a concern. So we need to make sure that we move these employees to the HEG B and HEG C. And in terms of noise, again, a similar type of challenge, and this is a national one. We've got employees that are still within that HEG A group, and we need to actually just move them out into the HEG B and ultimately to HEG C. For the Northern Cape, we are experiencing a problem where we still have employees in that HEG A group, and again we need to actually move those employees to the HEG B and ultimately out to HEG C. For heat stress, it's more or less a similar challenge. The province, I think we're probably all aware that the Northern Cape is it's quite when it's hot, it's hot. When it gets cold, it gets cold. And for me, the challenge is that we've got employees that are in that HEG group. We need to make sure that we take care of our people. I'm going to try and run through the slide, I think, for the sake of time, and get to the main points. And this is for coal stress. What I will do is I'll send the presentation to members so that we can actually just have this information. Fatalities that we've actually experienced this year. We had a fatality at Kalahari Manganese, where a supervisor fell into a draw point or chute at a center plant. The findings from that investigation is that there was actually no pre-start assessment that was actually in place, and then there was no physical barrier demarcation that was actually in place. This was a lady that was actually working in this particular area, and then she was directing the front-end loader to where to actually tip the material, and was accidentally pushed into the chute at the drop point, and then she later succumbed. She passed away. But quite concerning for me is that the contractor that was actually onboarded at that point in time did not have the requisite, or did not provide the required training for the people that were in that particular area in the center plant, right? And I think for us as a department, it raised concerns or questions in terms of the onboarding process that is actually undertaken. It's a prior person or employer or manager onboarding a contractor or an employee. Right. Why they don't go through a safety file or a file that is actually presented, just to ascertain for themselves that the people that are actually going to be working in that particular area are properly trained and they know what they are doing. Right. The second fatal that we actually that we experienced was out in the coast at West Coast Resources, where a front-end loader operator fell from a conveyor belt structure when it collapsed. Right. Quite concerning was that the conveyor structure itself, in terms of conveyor structure fabrications, was without necessary approvals from a structural engineer or the appointed 213-1 engineer. As on Northern Cape, one of the challenges that we've actually been battling with is the issue of engineers or qualified engineers. Right. We've got a number of operations that are sharing engineers, and this is without permission granted from the regional office. Right. You've got an engineer that you find in certain cases that you've got an engineer that is in charge of around about 10 or 20 operations, and for us that is actually quite a concern, because it leads to the question that is actually being asked is how are you able to service all of those mines in terms of making sure that you actually provide quality inspections and quality over inspections are actually conducted. right? And one of the proposals that was actually put on the table was to say, how do we, in terms of how do we address this particular challenge? And this is basically just, with the background that most of the engineers that are actually out in industry do not want to come to the North Cape for some reason, right? People prefer Woodbank, people prefer Gauteng, and then they actually want to be in Rustenburg. And I think one of the challenges
last crisis mentioned was November maand geweest. Sy dink seker financial year. Yes.
One of the challenges that we actually experience is that the people that are actually coming through, it's not people from the province. And I think as a proposal or as a solution is to develop the engineers from the province. I think there's kids that can actually be taken through to school and then taken through to do either mechanical or electrical engineering, and then and allow them to actually just come through the process, through a mentoring process. And I think ultimately this would actually lead us to an area where 5-6 years down the line, we're not really struggling with engineers in the province. The other challenge of fatality that we had, it was from Yapis Rust Minerale, and that is where an electrician assistant was struck by a pipe when a sling stepped. The sling had no load test certificate, and it was actually not in a good condition. And this goes again to the issue that we actually raised. You say this challenge of not having engineers is creating, and I think for us as a department is creating a challenge or a situation where you're experiencing a lot of fatalities or a lot of injuries in industry, primarily because of a lack of oversight or inspection that is actually conducted by engineers. And the key challenges that we've got as a regional office is, as managers without at least a blasting certificate or competence persons without necessary competency and knowledge of the Mine Health and Safety and Safety Act. And the issue, as I indicated, the appointment of engineers in one or more operations without permission from the Principal Inspector of Mines office. Okay. In terms of the issue of mine manager, I think the basis for us is if a person actually has a blasting certificate and they can actually be appointed. But we've got certain cases where there's not even a competency training that an individual has taken through, but because of an issue of preference, they're appointed in a position. And for us, it's actually quite a challenge, and that actually has to be addressed. And most of the time, what we're seeing that happening is from the small operators, and we need to collectively address this issue. We've got a lot of people that are out in industry that have the required type of experience. As a department, we've gone back to the blasting certificate board, and the regional office is actually running that program. If there's managers that we've got it out in operation, and then that require this this blasting certificate, let them come through so that we can take them through to the blasting, and then we can get them to get their blasting certificate. The key challenges again is legal appointees that are actually not taking full responsibility or part of the implementation process. And this is in particular reference to this part-time appointments for engineers. Right? People accept legal appointments, but they're not. They don't take charge. I mean, I think for individuals, I think it's just an opportunity to actually just make money, and they just running all over the show without making sure that that the right things are actually done. They come through on a consultancy basis, and he spends a day, and then from the owners, he comes the following month and he spends a day. Also, I think the challenge of shortage of certificated engineers that we've got, that we can collectively address that, as I indicated. Let's train our people, make sure that we, in five years' time, we've got people that can take up these appointments. And we also have an issue of safety declaration or pre-inspections that actually quite largely a paper exercise. They don't identify the challenges that are there. And so what we definitely need to do is to go make sure that we go up to, we get to a back to basics type of training that we get to our operators and to the people that are actually directly on the face. And this will definitely, there was a system in terms of identifying the risks that are in their area and making sure that they actually are addressed. And the other issue that we've got is mining within structures without necessary permission from the principal inspector of mine, or without permission from the regional office. Mining within 100 meters from structures and blasting within 100 meters from structures, right? If you can make sure that should this required blasting, should be required to actually mine within the structures or blast 500 meters from structures, if that is actually required, if you can, make the requested application to the regional office, and then we'll definitely respond to that. But as part of the permissions that we grant in the regional office, what we've done, or strategy, is to make sure that we scrutinize or we look at the legal appointment files beforehand, just to make sure that that operations are actually compliant. If there's operations that are actually not compliant in terms of the legal appointees, and then permissions are actually not going to be granted. So if you can get that right first, and then we can and we can bring those publications through to the regional office. And I think from my side, that is it. The entire purpose of the presentation was to give an indication or an overview of the Northern Cape. I think one of the challenges as an office that we've got is that the information that is always available to us is information that comes out from big operations or from big mines, right? What we need to do, I think, collectively, is to make sure that in terms of identifying challenges or problems, it is suit for purpose. And me saying that is to say, let's categorize mine in relation to the size of operations that actually are there. If there's operations that we need to categorize, I mean, there's actually small operations, and there needs to be certain areas or regulations that we need to relax or make sure that it's actually applicable to them in terms of how we regulate. Let's collectively do that. And I think as a regional office, we look forward to working with ASPASA and assisting their members in making sure that there's actually compliance. Over to you, Nico. I hope that the presentation has actually just given that information oversight into the province. And should there be anything, and I'm available, I'll provide my contact details, and then we can actually just engage outside of the session. Over to you, Mr. Pinard.
Thanks, Tumelo. That was excellent, and you did a very good job. Thanks for sharing these things with us, because I think we need to hear your side and your input too. The one thing I'll be communicating with you, which I'm having a bit of a problem with, is the illegal salt mining in your area. But I will send you a whole list of all the illegal guys. Annika has got your email now. Any other questions or comments from anybody else? Just stick your hand up or open your mic. Right, I'm not going to waste time asking for somebody to think about something. Thanks Tumelo. Thanks for everybody for listening. And I think we're now going over to Barry Pierce, who's going to talk about technical issues. And I think, Tumelo, you guys could also maybe listen to this, because it's quite interesting what Barry has to say about what comes out of what we mine. I think that's the crux of it. Thanks, Barry, and over to you. You just need to unmute yourself. Your lips are moving, but your voice is not coming through, Barry. We still can't hear you. You're muted. You must click there on the thing and unmute yourself. There we are. No. There we are. Can't hear you, Barry. Sorry. It's not coming through. Nothing. We see your face, we see your presentation, but we can't hear you. There, I think you now got it in.
All right, I'm just changing the...
There we are now. You're right.
Is that better?
That's better, thanks.
Okay, just change the port that the speaker's attached to. All right, good morning, everybody. I've got a couple of slides here to just chat you through where we are on the technical side. It's not one of the legislated scenarios such as health and safety and environment, but it really is what I would refer to as a bottom line scenario. So we'll have a look at the technical quality of the laboratory testing of the ASPASA members up in the northern region, and then also the deeming competent of people that work within that laboratory environment. And then I'll give you a quick rundown on where we are with all the documentation and the specifications and the publications of those new documents. First off, on the technical audits, most of you would possibly at some point have heard about ISO 9001, which is a management system. 17025 is the equivalent of a 9001, but it's specific to laboratories. So it's a laboratory accreditation requirements, and within that you have a look at your personnel to make sure that they're certified. I'll talk to you a little bit about ISO 17024, the procedure we're putting in place for the deeming competent of personnel. The calibration and verification of the equipment that you're using within that laboratory, and that's to ensure that it's traceable back to national and international standards. And then the participation in either inter-laboratory comparisons or proficiency testing schemes to make sure that the results that you're obtaining are similar to what's being obtained by the accredited laboratories, which gives you a sense of comfort that the result that you're producing for the material that you are supplying is actually comparable with the result that you get from a accredited laboratory. And then also that you've got a system in place for collecting evidence of the actual testing records themselves. We were hoping to get these laboratory audits up and running, I think it was back in 2019 or early 2020, but obviously with the advent of the COVID pandemic, this has been sort of put out a little bit. So into the end of 2021, we would hope that we'll be able to get a couple done. I'm based in the Western Cape, so effectively not that far from the Kimberley environment. It will involve a little bit of travel, but you know, I'm happy to get in the car and actually head north in that regard. As I said, it's similar to health and safety and the environmental audits, both in the method that we're using, where there's a template that's available on the ASPASA website that you can have a look at, and the costing is also the same. It's a one-day audit. It'll possibly be less than a full day, where we will come in and give you a rundown on what should be in place, what have you got, what needs to be corrected. And as Nico said as well, it's not an audit in the sense that we're going to come in there like proper accountant auditors with collars and ties and whack you about the hands to say that you're not actually doing this process correctly. It's really to assist you in improving the quality of what you're producing from your laboratory's results. Although it's in line with ISO 17025, it doesn't mean that you need to go all the way of becoming fully accredited. I would imagine that some of the larger organizations would look at maybe a head office laboratory getting accredited, and then we can look at how those larger organizations actually disseminate that information and process down into their branches, whereas the one-off and the smaller type of organizations that have maybe got 1, 2, or 3 quarries, we need to look at maybe slightly different model for them. On the lab audits, the first step that we'll have a look at on the left side of the screen there would be an initial audit, largely in the form of a gap analysis. It's going to be quite new to you folk, how we look at things and why we look at them the way we do. So it's really to get used to the system, what is required. And then in that, we'll also give a presentation giving you revisions to documents, where we are with Koto, which is the replacement for the Colto spec, TMH5 for the sampling, and then the SANS 3001 test methods, which you'll be testing against. The second audit, which would normally take place the following year, would do a check on the gap analysis that we did, check what you've done in relation to what we'd raised as non-conformances in the previous year, and check how you've actually performed. Moving up onto the third one, that would then be an audit into the third year, and this would then keep rolling on into the fourth, fifth, and sixth year as we go along. Obviously, from an auditing perspective, there'll always be something that you can find that is not 100% according to the system that should be in place, but it's really just a means of ensuring that if you maybe have new equipment that's come in, if you have a change in personnel, it's an outside check to make sure that what you're producing result-wise within your laboratories is actually giving you something that's usable by management. The basic benefits that I see, the first thing is that your results will then be comparable against commercial facilities because you'll be utilizing the same test methods. And if you are sending results out as a interim check with a commercial facility, you can start comparing the results that you're obtaining within your laboratory with what they're producing as confirmation. Obviously, there's an expense in sending test results or test samples to a commercial facility, and if you can keep those testing activities in-house, you would obviously be able to save a little bit of money in that regard. There's also confidence in the lab results that you are producing, so it will be informing any changes that are required from a production perspective with regards to the gradings that are coming out, whether they're too coarse or too fine. And it's also going to assist in confidence in the quality of the product that you're sending out the gate. The less rejections you have in material, the greater the increase in profit. So really it comes down to bottom line. So it's typical management stuff that we are looking at here. On the lab audit side, what will we be actually looking at checking? Obviously the management system, that would be the keeping of records of all the test results, the calibration certificates, the verification of the equipment on a daily basis, etc. Calibration and verification of the equipment, how to go about that, who to approach for that, what will give you the best answer, and the frequency at which you need to do your verifications. The competency of staff and the training that is provided, either in-house or externally, will be looked at as well. And as I said as well, the interlaboratory comparison participation and the result analysis of that. In other words, you need to see if you're partaking in a laboratory comparison where a sample is split between a number of suppliers, preferably with some commercial facilities that are accredited as well, which gives you the balance of what you should be getting and give you a validity of the test results that you're obtaining. You need to then look at where you are in the set of results and make sure that you're actually producing a result that is as comparable to the mean as possible. It's a step-by-step process. So we're not going to come in, have a look at it, give you a couple of pointers as to what you need to have a look at. We come back the next time and say you guys are perfect. It's going to be iterative in the process. You're going to start focusing on certain areas that are maybe more important to you than other areas, and slowly the system will actually grow and develop. So really we're looking at improving the quality of what you're producing within the laboratories and also your capability of what you can do. We will provide assistance and when required outside of the audits themselves. We can provide you with staff training. We can set up PTs and ILCs. We can assist you in partaking in current PTs and ILCs that are in your area. So basically, it's an assisted training and quality development program in the form of an audit, and where necessary, additional quarry visits should you actually need them. So in conclusion, your quality lab, quality personnel, and the resultant improved confidence in the results allows for a better management decision to be made on the quality of the product that is produced and sold from your organizations. It's not going to be a quick fix. It's going to take a number of years to actually get into the system, as I imagine it would have been a similar process getting into the environmental and the health and safety audits. So it's basically a long-term approach. It will be incrementally introduced. So your emphasis on what you believe is necessary to improve the quality within your facility is what you will place emphasis on initially, and similar types of scorings will be applied and given to your organizations based on what you observe within your laboratories. The quarries will need to grow and develop their knowledge of these systems, using the critically important function of laboratory testing, and then also creating professional testing facilities whose results are valid and on which good management decisions can be made. And in that regard, I'd be happy to get hold of you guys. I will be giving you a shout. There was a second auditor that we were going to be utilizing in the northeast of the country, Franz Bieneke. Some of you guys might be aware of him. He unfortunately passed away some months back. And unfortunately, we've lost his services as a result. So I'm basically at this moment fronting all the audits that will be undertaken, and over a period of time, I will look at maybe identifying folk in the northeast of the country, maybe the KZN region, that they can actually assist with those particular audits as they start becoming a norm within the ASPASA membership. So that is it on the side of the audits. Very quickly on the competency certification of the personnel. This is being run through the NLA, South Africa, the National Laboratory Association, and it's done under the ISO standard of 17024, which is the deeming competent of personnel. So it's basically a conformity assessment for the competency of your personnel. It's run in a very similar way to 9001 and 17025, where there's a structured framework that you need to actually have in place. That's been put in place by the NLA. That will then certify the persons once they've actually gone through the process that's required, and they obviously meet certain requirements for that certification scheme. And basically what it's going to give at the end of the day is a certificate to say that this person is competent to conduct specific test methods within a particular laboratory, and that certificate will be in place for a period of 5 years. The basic methods we'll have a look at from the aggregate side: sampling of stockpiles and conveyor belts, riffling and quartering and coning, your sieve analysis for flakiness index and ALD, bulk density and water absorption for your plus and minus fractions, and loose and compacted bulk density. And it's going to be any 10 of these 12 methods that we would look at actually assessing. ACV and 10% fact is also part of that. On the granular side, there are 15 methods, of which 12 will be looked at. Sampling of stockpiles is again part of it, as well as both treated and untreated materials. Obviously, from a ASPASA side, it would only be the untreated materials that we would be looking at. Nuclear gauge densities would not really be applicable to you, but quartering and coning is back in there again. Sieve analysis, the hydrometer, not really applicable to you. PR5 would be the finer fractions and calculations that are necessary. So that is something that you can undertake. Atterberg is something that you can have a look at. OMC and MDDs, as well as the UCS and ITS, the last two not applicable to you guys. CBR and moisture content. Moisture content, obviously something that you would be able to undertake, but in most cases, the MDDs and the CBR is not something that the ASPASA members would be too familiar with. And normally that is contracted out. There is testing on the concrete side as well for those facilities that have got concrete plants. And my feeling would be that maybe what we need to do is you can actually run the audit on both the concrete as well as the unprocessed material, the aggregates and granular, but that is something that we can have a look at into the future. The venues where this certification will look at being taking place will be using Gautrance's facility, their laboratory, the Western Cape Provincial Government's laboratory down in Cape Town, the Sanral Training Facility in Port Elizabeth, and then we're also looking at the Eastern Cape, the Eastern Cape provinces, Bisho and Queenstown facilities, and in Free State we have possibly got the use of free trans, but they've just got to get themselves up and running. KZN, we'd be looking at DUT and the University of KZN as well as possible facilities where the individuals will need to come through for that day to be actually assessed. The actual certification process itself, sorry, through that a little quickly. Once the candidate is confident in their ability or has received training, the registration will be per material type, so it will come in for a day to be tested on either aggregates or granular material. There will be a registration process where they will register with the NLA. The scheduled witnessing, which is done by an accredited assessor for each of the candidates, would possibly run, each candidate would sit in a group of 3 to 4, and they would be witnessed by a single individual. So 3 to 5 candidates on each day per evaluator, so we'll be able to get out between 9 and 20 of the candidates per week per evaluator or assessor. There will be a theoretical component that they need to have a look at. This will be done online, and it's really just a multiple choice. Either the person will pass and be allocated a spot, or they will fail. In the case where they fail, they can retake it within 1 month, gives them a bit of opportunity to improve their understanding, and then run that scenario again. Should they fail again, then they're out of the system for a period of 3 months. They need to be retrained to make sure that they're actually up to speed with what's required. The actual certification process, as I said, 80% of the basic test methods I've mentioned will be looked at. There will be a review of the assessment that has been undertaken to make sure that it conforms to the structure that is in place. If the candidate is unsuccessful, they will obviously need to re-register, but they do have the option to appeal the decision. Certification will be approved then and issued for a period of 5 years, and there will also be a database of testers available. At the reassessment after 5 years, the requirement is that they will need to be still active in the industry. There will be certain CPD activities that need to be undertaken. Obviously, being active in the industry is one of them. Any additional training that has been received will be looked at as well. And then we'll do an online assessment like we did for the first one, just to check that any changes in the test methods that have taken place during that 5 years that they've been certified have been integrated into their understanding. There won't be a witnessing as there is in the first assessment, and that is really just to save on time and money in the process itself once the person is in the system.
Barry, just a bit of time, please.
Yes, we are almost done. With regards to the documents, the COTA document is now published. It's been in place since the 1st of March. This is also applicable to provincial and municipal works as well. It's going to be in place for a period of 2 years, after which any comments will be integrated into the final document, which then will be published in 2023. I think for the ASPASA guys, the critical chapter for you guys is chapter 4, where they've split supply and construction. So the construction lies at a separate issue, and the manufacturing lies as a separate issue. I like it very much, and the main reason is we can work towards a process of getting the material pre-approved before it is issued to the contractors, and then once it is on site and they start to work with the material, the responsibility is left behind from the ASPASA members, and then that responsibility for the material is then transferred to the contractor. This is a major change from the COTA process. Chapter 5 is on the construction process itself, obviously not something that we are too concerned with, but there is training that SARF is providing on these as a 2-day course, chapter 4 and chapter 5. On the SANS 3001 series, almost all the current publications of the test methods are under review. When are they going to be published? I don't have a date for you. They are fairly dysfunctional at SABS at the moment. I did have a meeting yesterday with the director. And we're possibly going to have a look at trying to get a couple of things sorted. Our annual meeting is on the 10th of September, and we'll have a look at where we are with that. But they are under administration, they are under a restructuring scenario as well, so they're also in the process of getting rid of some of their staff members. So a little bit problematic on SANS 3001, but hopefully into the end of this year we can get that sorted. From the sampling side, TMH5 has been revised. It's now available on the CBITA website, so you can go under their documents and have a look at it there. It's classified as Manual 37, but it is still called Manual 37-TMH5. So we're going to have a look at it. There are some changes to how sampling is done on stockpiles, and that is something I think that the ASPASA members need to take note of. On the SANS 1083, which is the old aggregate specification, they're now going to include aggregates for all materials, so granular layers, concrete, asphalt and seals are all going to be incorporated into that. Really, it's just going to involve the extraction of the tables out of the new COTA document and be dumped into a SANS 1083. And there will be an explanatory document that will be held in the auspices of industry under the likes of the associations like ASPASA and CBITA and the Concrete Institute, which will explain how to utilize those. And the main reason for that is because of the inability of SABS to get that right. And that will be updated on a regular basis quickly and efficiently. And that is it from my side.
Thanks, Barry.
I'm done.
Thank you very much. Now, I'm not going to ask for questions. We're running a bit late and a bit long, so I'm going to ask the next speaker to take over. Thanks, Barry, and thanks for your input. You're a star.
No problem.
We all understand what you said, some of us, but not all of us.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good. Nico, I'm just going to have to excuse myself. I've got a meeting coming up at 12 that I need to run to as well.
Okay.
So all the best. If there are queries, the guys can just send them through to me.
We'll send it to you. Okay.
Super. Thanks very much.
Annika, Teresa, is she available?
I see she is in. Teresa?
Oh, there we are.
There you go.
There's a beautiful face in this dull men's face. Teresa, welcome. And thanks for coming again, because you did excellent last time. We just got a bit of a time span, so we can't give you an hour this time, but maybe you will know how it works. And then maybe you could also just introduce yourself and where you're from, because I will most probably get it wrong. So I'll make myself stupid. Thanks, Teresa, and we listen to you.
Thanks very much, Nico. I'm Teresa Hudson. I actually work for the Northwest University in the School of Industrial Engineering. Why I'm here is that I also volunteer for EXA, for the Engineering Council of South Africa, with regards to professional registration of engineers. And as volunteers, we sometimes get called to do road to registration training, which is what Nico is referring to. So previously I did road to registration training for a whole group of ASPASA young graduates who were thinking of registering. So that's kind of 2 hours of training, and I have 2 hours of training material which I can pull up. But perhaps it's better for me to maybe just also give you a little bit more context of kind of what I'm involved in, and then hopefully you can tell me what you would like to know, and then I can maybe focus on that in the interest of time. So I'm also the vice chair for SAI, the South African Institute of Industrial Engineering, and through that we have quite a few programs in place, mentorship programs and training programs, specifically also for registration through EXA. So my experience that will be of interest to you is really in the registration process. I also do the experience appraisals and the interviews for the people that apply to get registered. So I have quite a lot of experience and knowledge of the process of applying to be registered, and what people look out for in the registration process, and then also some of the pitfalls. I'm also mentoring someone myself who's trying to get registered. So Nico, I don't know if there's something specific you would like me to talk about, if you'd like me to talk about the process, or
I think what we have a problem with, and I think we raised it last time, is how do we get young professionals in the quarry industry, in the surface mining industry, to get them registered. Maybe people do not know that, but we have now been registered as a member of EXA, or associate member of EXA. I'll get my terminology wrong. And we're also most probably going to be able to give CPD points. And maybe if you could just quickly touch on how they register the CPD. And I think the DMRE basically said to us in the presentation, the first presentation, that we need professional people running mines, and I think that's something that why we're doing this, and to uplift the lower down guys. So if you could sort of touch on that, roughly around that.
Good. So I'm gonna assume that everyone kind of doesn't know anything. So and I just start from the beginning. So there's different categories of registration. So depending on whether you did a national diploma or like a BTech or a BEng at a university, and there's different categories of registration. So no matter what the qualification is, there's a category of registration for everybody that has studied engineering, and there's also some associated categories for like lifting machinery, etc. as well. But the main categories are people that have studied engineering in some way through normally an accredited institution in South Africa. But there are also paths for people that have come through alternative routes who maybe studied in a different country. There's even routes, for example, for people who have built up years of experience and never actually trained themselves formally as well. So there are lots of routes for people to reach the point where they are able to register. So what makes you able to apply to register is your qualification. That's the first very important thing, is that you need to have a engineering qualification that's accredited or considered substantially equivalent by EXA. And once you have that, you then need 3 years of experience. And then you can apply to register. And the experience is quite important because it requires you to have shown competence against 11 outcomes, which relate to things like complex problem solving, decision making, sound judgments, professional communication, then aspects such as health and safety, ethics, social, and the environment. So you need to be exposed to a whole bunch of things throughout those 3 years, and you also have to be exposed to them at various levels. So you need to be exposed at a level where you're actually kind of practicing and taking responsibility for engineering work for at least one of those 3 years. So many organizations have kind of engineer in training programs. Specifically big organizations, often people like Mines and ESCOM and Transnet, people like that have very well-established engineering training programs. And sometimes people think if you haven't been on an engineering training program, you can't apply, and that's not true. So you can, we have specifically in industrial engineering, because industrial engineers often end up in the middle of nowhere with no other engineers, even at the organization. So we have a lot of people applying where they're the only engineer in the organization, and those people are still able to apply. Sometimes it's important that they get a mentor, and the main reason for that is because your documents finally need to get signed off by a professionally registered person of the appropriate category. And sometimes if you're working in an organization that doesn't have those people, then you need mentors. So I mean, it's a nice thing. So that's what SAI does, the Industrial Engineering Institute, and something ASPASA could do as well, is kind of hook up people that want to register with mentors that can kind of sign off their documents and work with them to get their documents to the point where they are likely to be registered. So, and then once you submit your documents, and really your documents, people are scared of putting the documents together. Yes, it's a lot of work. We're actually at SAI currently thinking of launching like a 2-day retreat where people kind of bring their laptop with all their experience, and in 2 days we will like help them write up the documents, because it really is kind of 2 block days worth of work. It's just people firstly, they don't know what to put in the documents, and secondly, they don't allocate the time. So it sometimes appears to be a mountain in front of you, but it's not nearly as big a mountain as a lot of people think. So there are documents that you need to complete, and then there's this kind of 2-step process. the first process is it gets evaluated by people based on your documentation. So they'll look at the documentation and see, do they think you meet the outcomes? If they think you do, then they will forward you to the next step, which is then an interview, where you then get to demonstrate again that you've met these outcomes. And then if you do, and everyone on the panel is happy, then you get registered. If when they look at the documentation, they think that you're not ready, then they normally send the documents back to you with some guidance on kind of how to address it. And then they normally give you a year to maybe gain that experience or fix up your documents so that they are able to demonstrate those outcomes. So to answer your question, Nico, we also have a lot of challenges around people not wanting to register. And there's a variety of reasons for that. I think the main reason is that companies don't require people to register often, specifically in our industry, industrial engineering, people end up in banks, and banks don't, or traditionally banks didn't used to kind of require that. It was more people from Transnet and Eskom and the mines that were coming to be registered. But there's kind of a shift in the industry, and we're trying to shift it towards a place where people are proud to be engineers, or engineering technologists or engineering technicians, and that they are also wanting to protect engineering work. So that's something that's, as SAI, we've actively had to pursue, is to, like, for example, chartered accountants. You always hear about chartered accountants doing their big test and becoming certified chartered accountants. So we're kind of trying to get people into that space where it's something you're proud of, it's something you tell people about, that you've gone through this process and you've registered yourself. I think in the government also, we've seen, specifically recently with, all the strange things happening in the news about engineers being brought in from different countries, how important it is to have, a body protecting engineering work in a way. So I think it really is up to kind of voluntary associations like yourselves to try and position it in such a way that people want to register. Another reason a lot of people don't register is it can be quite expensive. It can be quite expensive to apply for registration. That's quite a big one-off fee, I think, for like almost 5,000 Rand. And then there's an annual fee that needs to be paid. Sometimes, if organizations are willing to help employees pay for that, that also helps. So, I mean, for example, just for industrial engineers, we see like I've said, Transnet, Eskom, Sasol, are the companies that send probably 80% of their people through the registration process on our side, because they're kind of really driving it from their side. So if companies drive it, people will register. But if companies don't require it, then it's very difficult to get a graduate to want to register, unless it's something that people look for, on a job advert.
Thanks,
I hope
Teresa.
that answers your question. Yeah.
I think I just want to just touch on something before we lock up on this one. The CPD points, I think I mentioned it to you previously. Yes. People want to have CPD points now, and I think last time, but I want you to say it, otherwise they don't believe me, is that when somebody sits in on our official health and safety audit for a whole day, or sits in on our environmental audit for a whole day, and we can issue CPD points, we'll have to check it out exactly how done. We can do so, and somebody can build up CPD points, which is good. It doesn't have to go to a course. You can sit in on a practical audit. Is that true?
Yeah, so there's actually, once you become a registered, there's a requirement for you to get CPD points, and there's a lot of ways that you can get them. So people think by going on conferences or courses you get CPD points. It's true, but actually there's different categories. So mentoring people, you can get CPD points, and absolutely, like engagement in voluntary associations and societies, like being on a voluntary association, also gets you points. And absolutely, we spoke about it before. I think the audits would definitely qualify for CPD points. So as a ASPASA, you can apply. I spoke to Annika already. You can apply to become a CPD accreditor, which means then you are kind of the body that would be responsible for investigating what is that audits consist of, and you would give CPD points for those audits, which would also count towards that.
Thanks. I don't know if there's anybody who wants to ask a question. I don't want to waste your time, but I thank you for being willing to come, and we're most probably going to use you much more in the future, because I think you understand the process and you also know what's going on. Unless there's somebody who's got a burning question, but also if somebody's got questions, they can send it to Annika and she can forward it to you so we can start a communication system. We've got your details now. Teresa, thanks a lot. You're a star. And thanks for being so efficient.
Thanks, Nico. As industrial engineers, it's our job to be efficient.
Do you also put PR Eng behind your name? Right, thanks, Teresa. I had a request from Anthony. He has to go to a meeting and he said he needs to be slotted in. So I'm going to push him in if you don't mind. He said he won't be long. He's just going to touch on the PDS thing. I think it's a very relevant subject matter now, and we need to get it going. So Anthony, up to you, please. You've got basically roughly half an hour, but if you could cut it shorter, that would help a lot. Thanks, Anthony. Have you gone already, Anthony?
No, Anthony, I can see you.
I'm here. Sorry,
Right.
I'm having technology problems today.
Yeah, but every time I don't know what's going on there in Nelspruit.
It's we're far from everything here. You see, that's why.
If you can't get the slides up, maybe just talk us through some of the stuff.
Should come out now.
Oh, we don't. Yeah, there we are. There we are.
Okay. Thank you, Nico, and apologies to everyone to push in here, but I'm a little bit tight for this morning. Folks, yes, good morning, and thank you for joining us. My talk is very, again, I'm going to make it as brief as possible. It's basically on on where we're standing with PDS, and then of course the way forward. And the Northern Cape hasn't heard from us before, so folks, yeah, enjoy it. The background, a Mine Health and Safety Act basically tells you that you've got to take a practical measure to prevent the accidents and accidents. And at any mine where there's a significant risk, which you would have determined in your risk assessment, you have to include the measures which are included in Chapter 8. I'm not going to go through those. You need to identify measures and to take measures. You need to mitigate the risk. And these measures can include, but are not limited to, the risk assessments, which you should have done by now, PDS systems, traffic management planning, and so forth. So what should be in place? As I said, the comprehensive risk assessment should have been done by now. And then your mitigation measures, which were identified in that risk assessment, should have been implemented. And you could, by now, you should be at about a level 6, preferably level 7 on your PDS structure, which I'll show you now. So level 6, basically 1 to 5 is your requirements, site requirements, segregation controls, operating procedures, authority to operate. That's your appointments. The PI alluded to those earlier on. Fitness to operate, your training, he also alluded to that. And then your compliance. Basically, most things that to get to a level 7, you're going to have things like reverse cameras, backup alarms, that sort of thing. That's basically where you're sitting. So it's very easy to get to a level 7. 8 and 9 is a little more difficult. So the revised implementation for the date is 2023. And just a word of caution here, please don't wait until 2023 to start your process. You will end up having a problem because the industry simply can't cope with the demand. So the Minerals Council did a comprehensive feasibility study on PDS. What came out of it was a limited number of approved suppliers. Again, a word of caution. There are a lot of fly-by-nights, folks, and they're going to take your money and run, and you're going to end up with systems that don't work. So please be very, very careful when doing PDS installations. There's some really good guys out there. They've got some nice products, They've done a lot of research with ASPASA and other approved bodies, but there's a lot of fly-by-night, so please be careful of that. The certain OEMs have given us access, have given the suppliers access to their operating systems. It's a difficult thing, this. The people, the big OEMs don't want to give us access, so your level 9 is a difficult thing because it basically takes over control of the machine. So there are trials underway at the moment, and people are. It looks very promising. We will communicate those once those are all out. Level 7 and 8, as I mentioned earlier, are available. Again, be careful who you buy from. Okay, Minerals Council also determined that the implementation of a traffic management system should be done ASAP. It's easy to implement if you really want to do it, and your traffic management system will assist in mitigating risks associated with TMMs. During the tests of the various systems, we've also noticed that PDS is without a traffic management system, your PDS effectivity is definitely reduced. So what is the objective of traffic management? I'm just going to go through this quite quickly. It's to achieve zero harm. Traffic management deals with the safe movement of people and vehicles. Why do we do it? We obviously want to prevent this sort of thing from happening. Now, the ripple effect of an accident like this, and here there were three fatalities, is tremendous. Not only are the 3 families that were involved in it absolutely devastated, but one's got to think about that operator who didn't come to work to kill anybody, and this is a preventable accident with a proper traffic management system. So the notion that a specific unwanted event has not happened for any number of years of operation is not a justification for ignoring the hazard or specific unwanted event. What this really boils down to is you can go to a site and you'll ask somebody, have you guys got is there anything wrong here? No, everything's fine. We only had this and we only had that and we only had that. But no one's dead. So, this is why people are saying they don't need traffic management or PDS. Guys, that's exactly where you're wrong, because this is where it will, once the risk assessment has been done, it'll show that there is a significant risk. So in your traffic management plan implementation, the following we found works extremely well, and this is in the planning phase, is to include all your staff that are operating equipment. You also need to include organized labor, your supervisory staff, and your managerial staff. And from personal experience, please, without the buy-in of your teams, your traffic management won't work, nor will PDS. So when you do the physical assessment, please look at the scenario critically and see what can be implemented. And please don't fool yourself and pretend that there's no risk. There is a risk. Every single mine has a risk, big or small. And then, most importantly, keep it simple. It's important that a simple system is easy to work with. It allows your operators to adhere to it, and they don't take shortcuts. So the risk assessment process was firstly to evaluate historical data, and then to be proactive in terms of what can happen or what could have happened, what potentially is on the horizon. You then implement, and there we look at the separation principle. In other words, if you separate machines, for example, on one-way things, and I'll show a few pictures just now, they can't have a collision. And then you need to remember that your operational requirements are always changing, so you need to be able to adapt that plan. And guys, yeah, the plan is a living document, so don't just put it together and put it in the cupboard. You've got to look at it, and your operators will come to you and say to you, this part of it is not working. We need to change it, and be willing to do that. So you want to develop and manage controls that will prevent these things. happening. And then importantly, and Nico always uses this one quite well, a barrier is something that either prevents or mitigates an unwanted event. And please understand, a barrier is not a couple of white stones down the middle of the road. That won't stop a 40 or 50 or 60 ton ADT from, you know, crashing into the oncoming traffic. You need to have proper berms. A few examples quickly on how we controlled pedestrians. This is a real life situation. The picture on the left-hand side, you can see there's a boom gate there. This is a security entrance to this particular operation. Now, the main thing is there's control. Your pedestrians are then diverted to the right. You'll see the pedestrian sign there, and then they follow a pathway to get to the offices and change rooms. The one on the left, the picture on the right shows the people walking up there. An example of a pedestrian crossing. We all have a need at some place on the mind for pedestrians to cross a road. So you just need to make it a control point with demarcated where it is safe for them to cross. This is what it looked like at this operation before we had traffic management systems installed. The chaos, as you can see, all these trucks just parked in a haphazard fashion, and potential for accidents. It now looks like this. There's some of the different trucks, I understand, but that's what it looks like, and there's order and there's regulated things. A bird's eye view of the same operation. You can see here where my cursor is going, the truck parking area. You saw that in the previous photograph. Things we do is we close off benches that are unused. We have a big pedestrian walkway going all the way down to the operational side here. And that is separated by a big berm, so that it's absolutely impossible for any vehicle to get to those pedestrians. When you have too many trucks, have a staging area. That's what we do here. We stack them in because we get a lot of big trucks at this operation, and we control the number of vehicles at the loading sites. At the primary tip, we've got a one-way going around here. It's accessed from both sides. You can see pedestrians are separated from TMMs. LDVs are parked on a separate place. So the whole thing works around a separation and control, and make it simple for your operators to work on it. Like a lot of quarries, the big mines don't have this issue, but the quarries do. They have narrow benches, and we found that a lot of the significant risk areas are at the loading points. So instead of machines bunching up next to an excavator or a face loader, we stage them, and the person doing the loading, whether it's the excavator operator or the face loader, he or she controls that point and will call the dumpers in when they need to come in. Here you can see the one is stopping, the one is coming out. It has free passage, and it works very well. The criticism that has been leveled at this system is that it's going to slow down and reduce the tons per hour. It actually doesn't. It increases it, and that is a test that we've done. Bit of traffic circulation on a plant. This was before we put traffic management systems in here. The yellow stars are all high-risk areas for collision. And after a lot of thought and a bit of stealing of space, this is a very tight site. There's not much space. We changed the direction, put a berm down the middle, separated the traffic, and reduced our risk by probably 90%. So it just takes a bit of thought, and the want to do it. And it really doesn't cost you much either. It takes a little bit of your machines and a bit of material, some waste material that you've got lying around. So the challenges were, it was a management commitment. The change of behavior is always the big one. People don't want to change. And that goes with the next point, the resistance to change. Implementation of the systems took a bit of time and thought, and then of course satellite industries that are on your site are also a problem. So what worked well was the consultation with the TMM operators. When I alluded to this earlier, then you need to monitor the plan to ensure your compliance and continued commitment to ensure the plan succeeds. Those last 2 points are vitally important for you to change the behavior of your people. The successes we had here, it was staff adopted the new measures because basically a lot of the measures were their own ideas. We separated pedestrians from TMMs very effectively. We achieved a feel safe climate. This was a spouse test. I actually took my wife through the plant, and she actually said to me, she feels very safe. And guys, take your wives. Don't take your girlfriend, you might get into trouble, but take your wives because ladies have a better sense of seeing danger than men do. We're a bit stupid with that. And then the management of our suppliers and collections. So the cost involved here was time and effort, a little bit of machine usage, a lot of common sense, a lot of commitment and effort. And if you do that, believe me, everyone's a lot safer. You have a safe flow. You have reduced congestion at your loading points. And you really and truly have proved this. You have an improved productivity on your tons per hour. And ladies and gentlemen, that's my story on traffic management and PDS. If there are any questions, I'd be very happy to answer them.
Are there any questions for Anthony? If not, we're going to move on. Thanks, Anthony. You always do this so easy and yeah. Since you've been telling us and showing us how to do it, I think a lot of people have grasped what to do. As I say, not a few white stands and a new stop sign.
Thank you, Nico. And if you'll excuse me, I've got another one to go to. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. We asked Corey he hasn't been around for a long time. Corey got very serious COVID. And he told me earlier on and before this that he nearly didn't make it. I mean, his wife was called in, they told her to come and say bye-bye to him. But Corey is our blasting expert, and we just give Corey a few moments, and he's just going to capture for us. So excuse all the gases and the fresh air and the stuff. Corey's not feeling well. He's not looking well. But Corey, thanks for coming back into life, second chance. Thanks, Corey.
Thanks, Nico. Hi, everyone. Just a brief description of what we do and what we get involved with through ASPASA. It's basically any challenge that you have relevant to explosives, whether it's legal compliance or blasting engineering. We can help you with that, and we can assist you. So the legal explosives or the explosive legal compliance audit, with the COVID, we adopt and we change that we can either do an online or an on-site audit. Now the online audit, we look at the information on the CEE's system versus the actual legal appointments, explosives, blasting procedures, risk assessment, relevant permissions and exemptions, whether it's from the DMRE or the CIE. And we provide a feedback session to the operation via the MS Teams. And we also provide an audit report with all the findings. The on-site audit that we conduct is then all of the above, but also a physical inspection of the explosives facilities, the magazines, the silos, rapid reloading areas, blasting bench, etc. And again, the legal requirements as well as adherence to the procedure. So that's mainly the difference between the two audits. So what we found is that there's mainly and it's fairly common that there's a disconnect between the CIE system information and the actual operational information. Not all the legal appointments are covered or it's outdated. The information of the operation has changed, but it wasn't rectified on the CIE systems. We also identified gaps in the drill and blast, the explosive related procedures and the risk assessment. the CTPs, the magazine licenses, there've been some changes in the industry. For example, Sasol has changed to NAX. So on your CTPs, you must make sure, and on your magazine licenses, you must make sure that it's not referred to Sasol anymore, but it is referring to NAX. And as well as the type of explosives is also aligned to the UN transport groups. They don't refer to blasting cartridges anymore. They refer to type B or type E type of explosives. So that's also a change that happened that we found is not rectified on the operations. Now, after we've done the audits and provide the feedback and audit report, then either the operation fix the discrepancies and the shortfalls themselves, or we can assist them to help them to fix it, with them. Some other information is that the explosives inspectors are conducting CIE system audits and then issuing CTPs for only 3 months, or depending on the circumstances, they suspend the CTPs pending the appointment and registration of the legal appointees, a responsible person, the receiver issuer, magazine masters, if you have magazines or silos. And they also require a copy of the mining rights and also the GMRE letter of no objection for bench deliveries. So we then also assist with preparation of legal appointees for CIE evaluation or testing. Again, the responsible person, the magazine master, the receiver issuers, and we also assist the guys with the CIE registration process. That happened to be a type of tedious process. It takes a long time, so we assist to fast track these processes and to prepare the guys for the actual test that they will be writing at the CIE. That also proved to be a big challenge. The guys go for 3 and 4 times before they actually pass. We also conduct quality assurance and quality control audits to help the guys with better improved blast results. That's more on the blasting engineering type. So that's in a nutshell what we do, and you can contact us through the ASPASA office. There is a fixed rate for these audits, and then the assistance and the help thereafter, that is based on quoted on a case-to-case basis. And Nico, that in a nutshell, that's it from our side. Any questions?
Thanks, Corey. Any questions for Corey? If you have something, you think about something, drop us a mail to Annika or to me. It's very easy, office at ASPASA or Nico at ASPASA, and we then forward it to Corey, and he comes back and he gives you help, or he talks to you about what the problem is. I think it's also becoming a big problem, the explosives communities and so forth and so forth. So that's why we always want him to tell us about these things, and he knows it quite well. Thank you, Corey. Go get better.
Thanks, Nico. Appreciate it.
I'd like to see you in face-to-face again. Thanks. Our next speaker is Charlene Barkies. She's been waiting long time now. Charlene, are you all right, my girl?
Yes, Nico, I am.
Oh, there we are. Great.
Getting better and better, but
you're actually good with this bloody laptop thing. But off you go. Tell us about
good. Where are we now? Good morning for a little while longer, everyone. I would like to talk to you about the financial provision in terms of the regulations that have changed. My name is Charlene, and I'm an environmental practitioner, and I've been working in the mining industry for more than 25 years. You can see it by the grey hair, and it's grey for that reason. In terms of the legal requirement changes, what we used to have is the MPRDA, the Mineral Petroleum Resources Development Act, was the act that we used to determine what the physical rehabilitation requirements of a mine would be. So what you used to have is you used to have an environmental management program, and then in terms of this environmental management program, you had to make sure that you apply what this program said to your mining area, and then when you can prove that you have done all of that, in terms of that process, you can then close your mine based on the conditions provided in your environmental management program. Now that system has changed in 2015 already. It became a requirement under NEMA. So it moves away from the Mineral Petroleum Act to NEMA, the National Environmental Management Act. And it had to be done by 19th of June this year. Now, you know, that was in the past. And of course, like all good things, we got a postponement. And it was very, very lucky that we got a postponement, because the requirements of NEMA is much more difficult than the requirements under the NPRDA. So in NEMA, you now had to have not only your environmental management program, which you must have, you must also have an annual rehabilitation plan based on your mine work program. You need a final rehabilitation plan or a closure plan, and you need a risk assessment report. Now, all three of these things needs to be costed. So you need to calculate how much it will cost you annually to do what is required in terms of your rehabilitation plan. And then you had to cost, in terms of your final rehabilitation plan, what is required. And if that needs additional specialist studies, that need to be coming in as well. And then over and above that, you need a risk assessment report. And part of this risk assessment report needs to define monitoring, auditing, and reporting requirements, as well as cumulative requirements. And then you had to determine what management activities is required. Now, my concern about NEMA moving away from the NPRDA to NEMA is whether we are asking the right question. Because you will see that we often say, for the person that holds a hammer in his hand, every problem looks like a nail. So if you had the NPRDA and you understood the NPRDA, then it seems like an easy fit to just whack this piece of legislation into the NPRDA space, but it's a big risk to take because it will not fit. So if we then look at the scope of the financial provision in terms of the new regulations, what it asks for, it asks for rehabilitation and remediation, decommissioning, and the consideration of latent or residual environmental impacts. So if we looked at the previous calculations, what would have been the case is that in terms of the previous calculations, we had a simple checklist, and we would fill in the amounts or the quantities or the area associated with the checklist. We would multiply that according to the rates, and then we would get an answer. So it was a fairly simple process to calculate. That was then. You may not use that system anymore. Well, you can use it up to 20 June 2022, but after that, you need the following. You need to have formulated, based on your environmental management program, an annual rehabilitation plan that is aligned with your mine work program. Added to that, you would need a final rehabilitation plan, and added to that, you need to assess all the latent or residual impacts in terms of your environmental impacts that you might still have. So if you need to continue pumping water out of the quarry so that there's no risk in terms of additional requirements, then that cost would have to be calculated additionally. The biggest risk, in my view, the biggest cost, in my view, is that these annual rehabilitation plans, you need to calculate the sum of the actual cost of implementing the plan for a period of 10 years. That means that there must be 10 annual rehabilitation plans costed, added together, plus the closure plan, plus the remediation that you would require in terms of latent environmental impacts. So these things must be done by what is called a specialist, which is an independent person qualified in terms of their demonstrable knowledge, qualifications, skills, experience, and hear this, in the mining, environmental, resource economy, and financial fields. It doesn't mean a person can be qualified in mining or environmental or resource economy or financial. It is all of the above. So these specialists are not that commonly found. So in terms of a review then, each year we do a performance assessment. So in the NPRDA requirements, the performance assessments was based only on the EMP. In terms of the NEMA requirements, not only do you do a performance assessment in terms of the NPRDA, in terms of your EMP, you also do an annual performance assessment in terms of your annual rehabilitation plan for the next 10 years, your final rehabilitation plan or your closure plan, and your risk assessment report. So the review suddenly got a whole lot bigger. Your performance assessment that could have occurred over 8-hour period now suddenly will take the best part of 24 hours to do. So in terms of these audits, it is required that an independent person needs to audit the requirements, and this person must have no business, financial, personal, or other interest in the review or the assessment of this operation. And under no circumstances may that person compromise the objectivity of such an audit. So if we then look at the reporting requirements, not only do we now need to assess this, we need to report on this. So we need to do our annual rehabilitation plan according to Appendix 3 of the National Environmental Management Act regulations, the final rehabilitation plan according to Appendix 4, and then the environmental risk assessment according to Appendix 5. Now, why this weighs very heavily is because all these requirements specify that there needs to be public participation. So now your community gets an opportunity to input in what would be your annual rehabilitation plan, your final rehabilitation plan, and your risk assessment report. And they get to see the numbers of how much it's going to cost you to rehabilitate, which by itself caused some ructions in some of the operations that we've been servicing. So if we then look at the change of the legal requirement from the NPRDA to NEMA, it needed to have happened by 19 June 2021, as I stated, but it has changed to 19 June 2022. So we have a little time left to fix this and to get the right things in place. Now, in my view, the most critical thing that you can do for yourself as a mine is that you can ensure that your environmental management program is aligned to your mine work program, that you can assess what your EMP is in such a way that you can cost every activity associated with your environmental management program. And then when that is costed, that goes into your own books that can be audited by your financial auditor, ensuring that it's done by an independent person as according to your mine requirements. So if I could make further recommendations, in terms of the accounting that I've just mentioned, itemize the environmental cost. So if rehabilitation was a one-liner in your accounting system, please break it up so that you can recognize at least the annual rehabilitation plan and the closure plan and the financial risk at the end of your life of mine of the latent impacts. Then, in terms of the environmental risk assessment report, this is not an EIA. An environmental risk assessment report looks at the due diligence, it looks at the risk associated with environmental non-compliance at the end of life of mine. EIAs look at the listed activities that you have. And then in terms of the...
You know why? Because I got pop-ups from another
I
meeting.
did that too. I just looked at it.
Is it?
Yes.
So it's not just me. What caused that?
Sorry, Charlene, I muted the participant.
Thank you. Okay. So additionally, you can use your social and labor plan, and then this will allow training, emergency drills and procedures to be included in that process. And then you can use drone maps or overlays or different mechanisms to plan accordingly so that you can have your 10-year mine rehabilitation planned out adequately so that it can be audited. And then, of course, the environmental performance assessment that must be done annually anyway can contribute to this, and you can combine these in order to effectively implement the requirements for ASPASA or for proof of your regulatory requirements. So what Nico and Anthony has shown us in terms of the effort that ASPASA is putting into the environmental capacity, you can see that if you do not align right now, June might be too early for you, and there's a real checklist that you would need to get through in order to ensure that you apply the new requirements, not according to the MPRDA, but according to NEMA. So in terms of my qualifications, I have a double master's. I'm currently studying towards my doctorate, and I've been in consulting now for 16 years, over 1,000 projects with many auditing hours and many training hours. And these are my contact details if you need to get a hold of me, and I thank you.
Thanks, Charlene. It's great to hear the story again. Every time when you tell me it, I get goosebumps and my tummy goes upside down, because I think people aren't realizing what you're sharing with us. And yes, we're going to keep on. Maybe also just share that we're going to work on a training plan in you.
So one of the critical things that that I thought to help, and I've shared this with you, Nico. One of the critical things that I think we can do to help the mines or the quarries is then to provide their environmental people with capacity so that they can look at their own environmental management programs and build that so that they don't charge, so that when the training is completed, they have a checklist of what must be done and what must be improved in order to ensure easier compliance. I think that's probably the biggest contribution that we can make to really assist them.
I think that's also important when we spoke about the CPD points and EXA and all of that. We could most probably build that in. So at some stage, we're going to have a lot of stuff that people can get CPD points for. But thanks for your participation and willingness. And maybe just something I want to share with the members before we sign off, me and you, is that we had an incident where somebody tried to get a mining right next to one of our member quarries. Charlene has now gone through it. We've appealed to the minister and so forth, because we saw that there was something funny happening. So if there's anybody seeing or hearing of somebody trying to open up a quarry and they try and misuse the process, then shout, and Charlene is available because she knows exactly what must go into the thing and then we take and she does a documentation for you. And she works for ASPASA at a very better, lower rate than what she would work for Anglo American. I'm only joking. Okay, Charlene, thanks for that. And I think our last speaker, sorry guys, it's taken a bit of a time this morning, is Jeremy. And Jeremy's also got a very, very important issue to raise. And that's what our whole idea is in ASPASA. Thanks, Jeremy, and thanks again for your input.
Great. Good afternoon, guys. It's already kicked past 12, but good afternoon, everyone. Nico, just checking you can hear me properly.
I can hear and see you. Great.
Fantastic. Excellent. Guys, I just want to, good to see so many people attending another regional virtual meeting. My last section is just to chat about and bring everyone up to date. Often it falls out of the guys on the floor or the individuals on the floor and more in the finance department with regards to the Royalty Act. It's been a matter long going. Since 2013, we started taking the matter on. There was a difference of opinion where, again, ASPASA had done fantastic work, foresaw the change in the legislation, and had put together a practice note where it was explained and trained as well as presented at Institute Quarrying meeting on how to calculate royalties. SARS were present during that whole stage and couldn't sign it off because it wasn't a legal document, but gave us their best wishes, and off we went as many quarries were doing the calculation as prescribed and studied, and all the work put in by ASPASA and KPMG. A couple of years later, 2013, SARS had, I think, realized there was possibly some more money to be made, and they have since then said, no, we cannot use that system and we need to redo our calculations rather than a costing at a muck pile level, just after you've blasted, to a costing at the stockpile level, which has basically been our ongoing challenges since 2013, trying to go backwards and forwards and appeal certain decisions made. And unfortunately, I don't know why Blue Rock is very favorable. Together with the diesel audit, we were picked in auditing, and we've since then appealed all the challenges SARS came through with our calculations, and together with keeping Nico involved, we've formed a committee that has been a bit quiet, but I think it's the matter is raising its head. We had a meeting yesterday with some key players and a new attorney's law firm, ENS, with Andries Marburg, who's going to be representing us should the case go to a court level. But we're doing all our best that we can try and get it negotiated, that we come to terms, a common agreement between SARS and the quarrying fraternity, that how should these calculations be done, and that any interpretation challenges are ironed out and going forward. So Andries is putting together some costings. Unfortunately, everything comes at a price, so Andries is putting some costings together for us that then we would chat through to the ManCom as well as key individuals within the corporate to make sure that we can create some funds to cover all the costs that are going through on that side. So it's quite involved, but just in a nutshell, through ASPASA, we're taking the matter on with SARS and Treasury, trying to get clear understanding that it doesn't cost us more than it should in terms of the legislation on that side. So that's just very, very much in a nutshell what the royalty matter is, and we are doing our best to overcome and still remain profitable in quarrying operations without any extra costs getting involved. I'm not sure if there are any questions, but it really just is a nutshell that we are busy putting together, and ASPASA is head on and taking the challenge to SARS.
Any questions? Any comments? Doesn't look like it, Jeremy. Just if there is, people can just send us a mail to office@ASPASA or Nico@ASPASA. We'll forward it to Jeremy, or we'll try and help and include Jeremy. Please keep the emails we send out. There's some very important things coming up lately, and people must not just discard our emails. Please read them. And this one could cost companies a huge amount of money. It's quite scary, and it seems to me that people are not catching on to it. So Jeremy and myself are a bit worried that it's ASPASA is doing it, but we need the money to pay the attorneys, and it's going to cost a lot of money. But anyway, let's not scare everybody. I just want to say thank you, Jeremy, for running this. Thank you all the other speakers. Yo, I believe we had a very good turnout of speakers, and this is the last regional meeting we're having this year. So we'll start again in 2022, and we'll have different subject matters or a rehash of some of the stuff that's developed in the meantime. So, and thanks for all the people coming. There's a few new faces, well, not faces, names that I didn't recognize, one or two that I spoke to. If we don't have your email address, send it through to Anneke at office@aspasa.co.za, and she will put you on the distribution list, and you can get all the meetings we hold. This one will be on the website within the next 2 to 3 days on the YouTube, and you can then also watch it and maybe share it with some of your colleagues that might argue with you and say, that's not right or that's not true. Thanks, everybody. Anneke, thanks for recording it. And everybody, unless there's somebody that's really got something to say, I think we're going to close down now. And everybody go away and enjoy the rest of the week. They say the cold weather is coming, and hopefully the Springboks win again. Okay, guys and girls, go well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gordon.